Hello, Beauty News family. Welcome to another episode of Kat and I Talk About Stuff. Today we're actually going to be talking about, we put up a video talking about brands that we thought were on the way out, failing, or had closed down over recent years. And at the end of that video, we actually put the question to you guys what you thought in terms of brands that might be in trouble. We thought that we would sit down and have a little chat about what you guys thought.
A lot of people are very insightful and have pointed out some obvious things that we missed. The biggest brand we did skip, and I do think it was on the short list, but it is such a big shit show and we totally missed this. The Body Shop. Now, it's actually very appropriate timing because James Welsh did a video like the fall of The Body Shop and did a sort of chronological, all the things that they fucked up and how they are where they are now. Now, the funny thing is, I think one reason why we didn't notice that is because a lot of the controversy early days would have been pre-internet, so it would have been out in newspapers and magazines, which we didn't get because we're in Australia. That's a UK-based brand. Also, Australia is the most profitable arm of The Body Shop. So we have stores in very prominent locations, very expensive rent, multiple locations in the city and in pretty much all shopping centres, and they do okay. So it was a bit of a shock that they were doing so badly, but you've got some facts and figures. They're doing really badly.
Yeah, they are suffering. So The Body Shop was owned by a brand called Natura, who had purchased from I think was it L'Oreal years ago, and they sold The Body Shop to an investment firm called Aurelius for £207 million, but Natura had actually purchased The Body Shop, it was in 2017, from L'Oreal for $1.7 billion. So they took a massive hit. When Aurelius purchased it, something must have happened. I don't know, but they started to shut up shop really quickly, essentially. They shut down, I think, all US stores. Yeah, all US stores. They shut down a whole bunch in the UK and in other areas of Europe. Some parts of Europe they shut down completely. They no longer are running in those areas at all. The only places that are still sort of up and running, like Kat said, Australia and New Zealand. Australia is the most profitable arm, and they actually basically cash pooled the UK after our holiday season. They took all of the money that the Australian, probably not all of it, but they took a whole bunch of the money that the Australian arm of The Body Shop made, and they sent it over to the UK to basically keep things afloat while they dismembered the company, I suppose. Something interesting that I did discover was they appear to have actually sold the company to another company called Alma 24, which is known for shutting down unwanted businesses. However, they did a sale that allows Aurelius to maintain the intellectual property to The Body Shop. So that means any part of The Body Shop that does go into bankruptcy and is completely closed down could technically potentially be reopened without debt. So that's interesting. I think they are still trying to do what they can with The Body Shop, but I don't know if they're ever going to be able to bring this back from, I mean, this shit is in the fucking grave as far as I'm concerned. There are still some franchises in Asia that are operating, and Canada is also considered to be profitable. However, there were some store closures there as well. So it's very interesting. I also saw that Natura had purchased Avon, which was a really weird one. And they'd also purchased Aesop, which is an Aussie brand, I believe. But after they purchased The Body Shop, Aesop, and Avon, they then went on and sold The Body Shop and Aesop and are just focusing on Avon, which is the most bizarre shit I've, like...
The only reason why Avon to me is at all relevant is because it is featured in Edward Scissorhands, which I watched the other night with my kid. So
Yes.
Avon calling.
Yeah.
Other than that, it is history and it's dead in the water. But yeah, I think The Body Shop is obviously in trouble, and it's just interesting that there are some little markets that are doing well that seem to have been keeping it afloat. But the thing is, it's probably, like you said, dead in the water. And if you want to see all the controversies, we'll link the video. It's very interesting. I didn't know the vast majority about them. Yeah, so there we go. Absolutely right. People that say The Body Shop, like, spot on the money. The next one that was suggested, which I totally agree with, I don't know if this has slipped my mind or if it was just something that we didn't get around to talking about, but Lorac. So Lorac, look, the Lorac Mega Pro palettes back in my day were most coveted item of the year, and
really hard to get.
So hard. They would not ship internationally. We had to go through all these different channels to try to get these damn pallets, and they went from being the most coveted thing where they were snobs and wouldn't ship internationally to, like, again, they have not, this is how bad they are. If you go to their Instagram account, they have posted 3 posts in the last year. That's how bad they're doing. They're not even bothering reposting. They're not promoting. They're doing nothing. Do you have some facts and figures?
I do. So Lorac was purchased by a company called Mark Wynn's Beauty in 2018. Mark Wynn's already owns some pretty big brands that you would know of. Lip Smacker is one, Physicians Formula is another, but Wet n Wild is the big one. And they do own some other brands as well. I feel like Lorac was sold as a distressed brand anyway, probably by people who just didn't want to run it. I honestly feel like this brand is never coming back. They will just not do anything. They will sell old stock and we'll never hear from them again because they're putting all their eggs into the Wet n Wild basket at the moment, and I think it's bizarre.
The interesting thing is, though, that they did have a launch, and it was almost like a rebrand where they released a bunch of these a couple of big palettes and then like mini palettes, and so it was sort of like Lorac was back, and that must have been around the time where they either sold or purchased and they were trying to like reinvigorate the brand. Maybe they realized like this is too hard. Maybe they bought the formulas, like they bought the brand for the formulas.
Potentially.
Because they did have nice formulas.
Could be true. They have fantastic formulas. Actually, here we go. I'm wearing this on my eyes today.
There you go. Appropriate.
They do, and I still I've always loved Lorac formulas. I think they're great. Yeah, they were just always so hard to get here, and I think that made them even a little bit more special, like a little bit more like, oh, you know, I want Lorac, give it to me. But I think potentially everywhere else it was becoming fast irrelevant.
Another brand that we totally forgot closed down, Tati Beauty. Now they did. They closed. I think they announced a closure in 2021, so it was around the time of COVID. But essentially, it was a court case, and I'm not going to go into the details, but a court case with the investor or part owner of Halo Beauty getting upset that she was releasing makeup not under Halo Beauty. There was a thing. So essentially, I think she had to halt the brand. But the thing that's interesting is not only was that brand very popular with the palette that she released, but there's hints that it is coming back. So from what I understand, the court case has been resolved, and she actually has like a mailing list now, and she's dropped big hints that Tati Beauty is coming back in some way, shape or form. So wouldn't surprise me. Yes, they did close down, but it wouldn't surprise me if they were coming back very soon.
I would say when it comes to Tati Beauty, this is one that I don't put in the same category as all of the other brands that we're talking about. Because I feel like
It wasn't
Tati
a failure.
Beauty...
Like, it wasn't traditional failure.
It wasn't... Yeah, it wasn't your run-of-the-mill, you're releasing boring products and you're no longer relevant. It was just a snafu. Like, I don't think she really had too much control over the situation, considering that she was being sued. So yeah, I don't put it in the same category. I do want to see her come back because I want to see like what she would release. I'm more curious to know what she would release in this climate. But yeah, we definitely forgot that one.
It was a big one. The rest of the brands we're going to sort of lump into sort of themes, and influencer brands come up a lot. Now, there are some that have merit. One that comes to mind is Hindash. Now, Hindash Cosmetics released great products. I'm going to say really enjoyed Hindash products. But if you go to the Hindash website, everything is out of stock and has been for like at least 6 months that I know about. So it feels like they've shut down the site unofficially. Also, the Hindash Cosmetics Instagram account, which admittedly doesn't have much of a following. I think he did most of his promotion on his Hindash account, but they haven't posted anything since August last year. So I don't know what happened there, but that is definitely one that is of interest because I really like the brand. I thought it was a good brand.
So do I.
Yeah.
Everything I've used, I've loved. I hope this is just a hiatus.
Another huge one that people love to mention is Jeffree Star. Now, I do think that Jeffree Star has lost a lot of ground. Like, Jeffree Star was the coveted brand. They dropped a big release. They had so much stock and they would sell out and whatnot. Now, they're continuing to release products and new products, not just new shades of existing products. They're formulating a lot of skincare and a lot of like that kind of stuff. From what I understand, he's gaining a new following on TikTok. So I feel like he's like a cockroach. You can't kill him. He'll just keep finding a new audience. I know. But I do have to say the time of Jeffree Star being a big, huge player in the beauty industry has completely gone. So I don't think we're going to start seeing brands wanting to stock Jeffree Star too much. But I think there's always going to be a bit of as long as he lives anyway. I don't think the brand's going to outlive him.
Yeah.
He's got to be the driving force. But it is here to stay, I think.
In the comments, you guys were like, how is he still a thing? And people were talking about yak meat and all sorts of stuff. And yeah, I mean, he's still out there doing his thing. He's got makeup, he's got skincare, he's got yak meat. And I think he sells medical marijuana still. I'm sure he used to, didn't he?
Yeah, that's also how he made a lot of his money. He talked about cosmetics, but a lot of it was actually invested in medical marijuana. And then marijuana became legalized and he was raking in money. So it was just sort of like his pet project anyway and making shit tons of money elsewhere. So he's doing fine. Even if he's operating at a loss, he's probably going, okay, it's a tax cut from my other ventures.
Exactly. You guys don't know why he's still a thing, but he certainly is. He'll always have an audience. As long as he's sort of getting himself out there, he'll have an audience because he knows how to bring an audience in. He knows how to make himself appear and the controversial things to say and all of that jazz. So he's always going to have an audience. But, I mean, eventually, I'm sure he'll probably get too old. It'll happen to us all. It's happening to me.
That's already happened to me.
Another brand you guys were calling out quite a bit was Nimya, which is Nikki Tutorial's brand, which I was talking to Kat about earlier, and I said I feel like that brand is just, I don't know what's happening there. It's weird. She launched with skincare, what felt like late in the game. I mean, she was before James Charles at least, so You know, there's that. But yeah, she did. She launched with skincare. She's not known for skincare. She's known for her very dramatic makeup looks. And I said to Kat, has she ever even launched makeup? And that probably tells you how sort of in the spotlight her brand is. If you're not looking for her brand, there's a good chance it won't fall on your doorstep in terms of, you know, social media presence. However, she has a huge fan base. So that is her market right there.
Even if it's just a low percentage of her fans purchasing, I think she's probably still doing okay. And again, even if she's not doing all that well, she's making enough money from everything else she's doing that it's probably not that big a deal.
Yeah.
And finally, I think that they've released something that is worthy of being interesting. So skincare fan, buddy, like a battery operated fan, lip glosses, an ugly eyeshadow palette. It's like a nude eyeshadow palette with a pop of orange and a pop of blue to reflect the packaging colors. What? But the thing that I think is interesting is these little pot blushes that are very on trend. So I think finally we're seeing some nice glimmer of something interesting. I don't know if more is to come, but it's a confusing one, that one. Another one, I'm going to lump a few of these together because we've got a lot of brands to talk about. Auric and M Cosmetics. A lot of people are like, what are they?
Yeah.
I honestly feel like, again, it's a very niche. Auric, I feel like, is the expensive clean girl aesthetic. People that are into that and want to spend money on good quality packaging and nice feeling stuff will probably go down that path. I'm almost thinking like a Victoria Beckham on a smaller scale.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then I think also M Cosmetics, I think, does fairly well. They've just released a few new blushes. They're fairly frequently releasing products. I feel like they're really targeting more the Asian sort of maybe whether it's community or countries, but definitely the sort of Korean and Japanese inspired makeup. Again, very clean, very pink, very blushy. I sort of feel like that they're doing really well. So it might fly under the radar, but I think they're doing super well. Another one is House Labs, so Lady Gaga's brand. So many people talk about that. I don't know, but so many people talk about that brand. Like the concealer is great. And the blushes are amazing.
Yeah, if you say anything bad about the launches and you check out the comments, people ain't having it. She's like, her fans are out with knives. Watch yourselves. There is a brand that we pulled out of the comments that we feel is a bit of an outlier with the rest of the brands that we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about them separately. And it's actually Farsali. So Farsali scaled back and pretty much closed down to a degree in 2020 to focus on some personal priorities. And also they did cite COVID being like a bit of a red flag for them. They were like, I don't think this is going to be good. So what they did is they pulled out of Sephora stores and they maintained an online website. So they had direct to customer purchasing available. They also had some contracts in India and in the UK, which were in-store contracts. So they maintained those. Anyway, they've returned. They've come back. They've said that what they're trying to do is come back, but be a bit more, I guess, mindful of like the fact that they're a bit of a
gimmick.
That's a perfect word. They were a gimmick brand. They had gimmick products. They were driven to popularity by people like using them like jizz on their faces on Instagram. And now they want to come back and be a bit more serious. So they're trying to come back with updated formulas and also offer more education about what their products are supposed to do for your skin. So they're supposed to have more of a purpose. I think it is interesting that they shut down and then came back. They obviously think that they can make it in the current climate. Whether they can, I don't know. The dropping crap on your face thing, people still do it. They still, smear shit on their face on TikTok and Instagram. So at least they've got that to fall back on, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it is an interesting one. I'm almost... I find it very perplexing because the reason they left... So they actually pulled out of over 2,500 Sephora stores worldwide. Massive. Massive. They've pulled out so much. It's crazy. And it was because the couple that own it were wanting to start a family and had issues with infertility, and they have since had a daughter and they've got a second kid on the way. So they've ticked those boxes. They're like, okay, we did what we want to do. We want to come back to it. But I just find it so weird that instead of actually going, let's assign a CEO and let's get a lot of help and let's have people help us run this massive company, they instead were just like, no, we want to focus on our family. So see ya. I just thought it was such a weird thing.
Yeah, look, I thought it was weird too, and I'll link an article that I found online where he did a little interview talking about why he left and now he's coming back and blah blah blah. And he did mention why they didn't have anyone carry on the business while they sort of took a hiatus and did their thing. Honestly, I think they could see the forest for the trees. The fact that Fasali was... After a while, it was being called out as what does this product even do? We're sick of seeing this all over our Instagram accounts, people dripping this crap all over their face. I bought it, it's overpriced, I feel like it does nothing, what's the point? I think at the climate, with COVID coming, with probably family stresses around trying to conceive, and also the discourse online being what the fuck do these products even do? Maybe they were just what, let's just take a break for a while.
I don't know, because I feel like, firstly, it's a nail in the coffin of a brand that you've built and spent a lot of time building. So, and if they did have a belief that their products were better than what I thought anyway, they could have had campaigns to fix that.
They could have,
essentially, but also the telling thing to me is they've still got those products in their line. So it's not as if they're oh, hang on, we actually released trash that we don't stand behind. They've still got them. They still release them. So I just think what it was probably a company that got too big too quickly. I don't think they were having a decline.
Yeah,
apparently,
possibly.
according to that article, they're the second most popular brand at
Sephora.
Sephora.
They were doing really well.
They were doing super well. And I think they just couldn't manage it. I think they grew too big and they didn't have the assistance. And that's why brands go on things like Shark Tank. They look for people not only to invest, but also to help them scale up. Because your average business owner doesn't know how to scale up to a giant level.
That's right.
And it can be very stressful. And that's probably what they were experiencing. But instead of actually doing something proactive about it, they were just and they shied away. Yeah. So I don't think the brand's going to pick up anywhere. I don't think Sephora, they might touch them. They might go, you were selling so well there, come back. I don't know.
Yeah, possibly.
But yeah, it's an interesting one.
Because they were selling well. According to that article, Sephora was we don't want you to go. Apparently there are contractual things that you have when you've got shelf space with Sephora. And I believe releasing new products in certain timeframes is one of those contractual obligations. And Sephora even said why don't you just ride out the pandemic and see how you go, and you don't have to release anything new, just keep the shelves stocked. And they were no, I don't wanna.
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I think Fasali is interesting too. Mm-hmm. But I appreciate you guys commenting about Fasali because went on a little deep dive there. Learned a whole
I do remember when they announced that they were pulling out of Sephora, and then they sort of just went off the radar. But it's interesting to see that they're trying to come back. The next few we're gonna group into categories, so because we've got a lot of brands to talk about. We've noticed a bit of a trend where a lot of people are calling out some brands that seem to be still doing okay. But what happened, and this might just be a time, an indication that maybe the makeup community is slightly on the decline. But we just found like pre-pandemic, there was such a boom with brands and PR was going everywhere and people were talking about all these brands and buy this and buy that and international shipping and da-da-da-da. And then all of a sudden, it's like brands have just sort of retreated into their niche or their country or wherever they're successful. They're sort of, retreating back into that. And a couple of examples. So we had comments like Nabla, Kiko, LH Cosmetics. They're all brands, that are popular. So Nabla and Kiko are really popular in Europe. They're both Italian brands. LH Cosmetics is a Swedish brand. So they're probably doing very well in those sort of regions. But if you're from the US, for example, you just might not see the popularity. And that also extends to, we talked, I think, in the last episode about brands that have sort of started pulling back out of international markets. So Inglot, we're talking about closing, like all the stores almost in Australia have closed. There is still an online store, but I reckon that's closing any day. Again, that's a Swedish brand, very, very popular in Europe. Shuramura, we talked about. And
doing well there, apparently.
Yeah, doing well. Like the most, essentially it's like one of the most popular makeup brands there. Shuramura retreated from being global to pretty much being Japanese exclusive, as well as their hair care range, which was really well regarded. So that's another brand that sort of retreated. And then Pretty Vulgar also seems to be still quite popular in the UK, but has been pulled out of Australia and sort of the US, and it used to be everywhere in Sephora, and now it's sort of localized itself. So these brands I don't think are necessarily closing. I think they've just realized we tried to tackle a global scale and it's not really working for us. So to be viable, let's just focus on the audience or the area that we're doing well in. That's what I think is happening there.
That's definitely what I got from looking into these brands further. And I do wonder now, like, is that sort of a trickle-on effect from COVID because people, couldn't go to shops to buy makeup. You could only order it online. Most people stopped fucking buying it anyway and just focused on skincare and self-care. So potentially they just haven't sort of re-spread their wings, their global wings, or maybe they won't ever again. You can still buy these brands, like you can still get Nabla. You can, if you have access to Kiko, you can find it. But Nabla still sell online.
Nabla ships internationally. LH Cosmetics do. Kiko, we've never been able to access in Australia.
I don't think. No.
And then I think Shuramura we can't access unless it's like a Japanese online store that ships internationally, which they have a huge markup and very limited products. So I think some of these have always been international shipping, and some of these have really retreated back to being like very localized.
Which I think if that's what it takes for a brand to stay afloat and they can do that with the market that they have, then do it.
I don't think all brands need to be everywhere, to be fair. Like as a makeup consumer, it'd be awesome to access everything that everyone loves, but that doesn't mean I have to. Like brands don't have to ship to me if they can't justify it.
I would actually say, based on that statement, 100% agree with it. And I think the thing that caused the makeup boom of like 2015, 16 to like 2020 when COVID hit, those years were the years where you pretty much had access to almost everything via online shopping and international shipping. But prior to that, there was so much that was hard to get around the world. And I think once brands really started to open up international shipping, that's when it just boomed. And people were like, holy shit, look how much money these brands are making, these makeup companies. And then every man and its dog made one. And then COVID hit and it plummeted.
Yeah.
Going on from brands that are popular in specific countries, we're going to go into brands that are popular in specific niches. And you can probably tell what niches these are based on the brands we're going to talk about. So Besame Cosmetics was one that was mentioned in the comments, along with Black Moon Cosmetics and Sugar Pill. Now, all of these brands literally have a very specific target demographic. They are all also still making products. They are publishing on their Instagram accounts. They have a market. They have a following, you know. You could probably consider these quite similar to influencer brands. They just don't have an influencer behind them. But they certainly have a group of people who love the products.
Yeah, and I think, again, some of these may have retreated back to their niche a little bit more over the last couple of years. Like Besame, for example, was doing all those collaborations. It was talked about a lot, like the Snow White and the this and that and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden it seems like they dropped off the mainstream radar. But again, it might just be that they're niching back into their audience that are repeat customers. And yes, are they probably not making as much? Probably, but they're probably not as spending as much as well. One brand that could be in this category, but I almost feel like it's a little bit more at risk, is Melt Cosmetics. And the only reason I say this is more at risk is because they are spread wider in terms of stocked in like Sephora US, moving bigger amounts. So yes, they tend to hit a similar niche to what overlaps with Black Moon and Sugar Pill, like the colourful alternative sort of, it appeals to that audience as well. But I almost feel like they may be a little bit more exposed being in such a large retailer.
Stores.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to be shutting down anytime soon. They're probably going from strength to strength, but I do feel like, especially now that sort of more clean girl, Barbie core, ballet core sort of vibe is going on. This might not do as well. Like, I'm just thinking Kat Von D in Sephora, like how that went. This might need to start retreating a bit more as well.
I get exactly what you're saying, because I do look at Melt similar to a more modern day Kat Von D or KVD kind of brand, and maybe a bit more soft core Black Moon, if that makes sense. So, and there's always going to be a market for that. Like, yes, we're always going to have girls following the trends, but then we also have people that just aren't about that. So, and there's always going to be a market for more alternative brands. So I think they will always have a place. I just don't think it's going to be as big as it once was. I don't think they're really, you know, they sort of came along and slipped into a niche that wasn't, there weren't a lot of brands representing it. Yeah, but also there weren't a lot of brands that like represented it, that sort of alternative makeup. So I think, they'll always have a place.
The last sort of category, and this is a pretty big category, and this is one that in this list, there may be a lot of brands that are in trouble, but it's very hard to tell because these brands, some of them have been doing things that have suggested that they might be trimming the fat. So, for example, we've got Benefit. They've recently closed down, in Australia, they closed down the online site. I think Urban Decay did the same, potentially in the UK, shut down like online site. So this could be brands that are still doing quite well, just trimming the fat and realizing these areas aren't working. So let's double down on what is. Also, these brands might have a lot of quiet consumers. And I'm just thinking as well, like Benefit and Urban Decay are good examples of this, where both brands have products that probably carry the whole brand. So like Benefit and their brow products and their mascaras probably keep the whole brand afloat. Also, their brow bars are still very popular in Australia. I don't know about the rest of the world, but they're still like very popular places to people to get their brows done. Urban Decay, I think their finishing spray, their eyeshadow primer, and their viral Moon Dust Space Cowboy eyeshadows, I feel like those three products alone are probably keeping the whole brand afloat and trying to find the next thing that will keep them afloat in the future. So I think these brands do have a lot of quiet consumers, and if they do any sort of modification that might hint at trouble, it might just be sort of restructuring.
Yeah, absolutely. Another brand that's in this list that I think is actually a really good indicator of like we don't know what the hell's going on here is Beauty Blender. And just based on the comments that were left by you guys, it was very mixed. Some of you were saying Beauty Blender, who? Like, how are they even still a thing? There are so many dupes on the market, and most of them are even better than the Beauty Blender. But then we had people saying, Beauty Blender, like no other brand compares to what Beauty Blender creates, which I found really interesting because I haven't bought a Beauty Blender in years. Like, I always buy something that looks like a Beauty Blender, but it's always from different brands because I just think there's so many more available these days that are much more affordable, and they're even softer. They have a nicer texture. So Beauty Blender is an interesting one. Although today I did see a TikTok of someone who works in a Sephora and who was like, if any brand is going to die in 12 months, it's going to be Beauty Blender. So we'll see what happens there.
Do you know what I think went wrong with Beauty Blender, though, where their possible downfall was? Them trying to break into makeup. So they released the sort of foundations, the concealers. And I sort of feel like I understand where they were going. Like, it makes sense. You've got a tool.
Absolutely.
And you use that to apply foundation. Why not have foundation? But I sort of feel like when you get into that department, you're spending so much money. Beauty Blender, they were on a good thing. Not only did they create a huge trend where everyone started switching from brushes to sponges, and I think probably there's brush companies, Zoeva, all those kind of things. I feel like they might even be feeling the burn because sponges have become so popular and so everyday. But sponges would be so cheap to make, and the markup was crazy insane that they probably made so much bank that they could have just ridden into the sunset and sold these products forever. Their issue was putting too much money into R&D to make it into a makeup brand when they were at the peak of makeup, and it's probably on the way down. If they just niched down to tools, I reckon they could have been totally fine for decades.
That Beauty Blender Bounce foundation that they made, like, that was not a bad foundation. It wasn't the be all and end all, but like they had specialized packaging where you could like pump it out and it would go on the packaging, and then you could use your Beauty Blender to pick it up. They had a huge shade range, and even included like, I mean, it was great for me because they had like light colors with olive undertones and stuff, which you don't really see all that much. So they must have put so much fucking money into that. Custom packaging, all of the R&D to make sure that like when you squeeze it out, it comes out in the right amount, at the right pressure, all the color shades. It would have cost them an absolute fortune. And it just didn't really go anywhere.
Well, to be fair, they did bring out other foundation products. They've got Always On Radiant Skin Tint Foundation in a dropper bottle. So they got rid of that weird bottle. The Bounce Foundation is now in a tube, which they must have admitted defeat that bottle is weird. And they also have bronzer highlighters and Bounce Liquid Whipped Cream blushes. So they do have makeup. I just don't think they need it. They got a setting powder. So they're really trying to make the makeup line happen. I don't think think that's where they need to go. I think that's going to be their downfall, is focusing too much on trying to compete with makeup.
Yeah, they're just not on my radar these days for anything really. But that doesn't mean that they're in trouble, because they might be on other people's radar. But a similar brand, Real Techniques, People were questioning this in the comments. They were like, what the fuck's happened to Real Techniques? I don't know. Apparently they've shut down their website, but I'm pretty sure you can still buy them in Priceline, can't you?
Look, I went to a Priceline in the city, this was not too long ago, and they have like just shelves and shelves of it.
They've got like a whole damn wall of that shit in the Priceline CBD one. I know that.
So I don't know if we're keeping that brand afloat, Australia. Like, come on, get with the program. The Body Shop, we're keeping afloat. Maybe Real Techniques. Maybe Beauty Blender for all I know. I don't know. But I do know that like the brand launched with the faces of being the Pixie Woo sisters were the faces of Real Techniques, and they had a contract for a certain amount of time, and they didn't stick with it. So then they took their faces off. But I feel like it's just become a brush brand that people don't know the origins of. They just know that it is at Priceline. You can buy them in kits. You can often find them 40-50% off, and that's what people buy. And they are decent brushes. So I think because they're okay brushes, they're probably just going to exist as the next Eco Tools. Do you know what I mean? I think it's a potentially a similar brand, isn't it, that owns Eco Tools?
I think they are, I think so. Yeah.
So that's where I think it's going. I don't think they're going to take over the beauty industry and people are going to talk about them like they're the next big thing. Like, I remember buying, we couldn't get them in Australia or all the sets, so I would order them from iHerb, and I ordered one of everything, and I got this giant box, and like all my brushes were Real Techniques. Gone are those days, but also that was like 12 years ago, so it's been a while, but they're still kicking around. So I think it's just become a bit of a staple in Australia anyway. I don't know, probably
I think
in the UK.
So, yeah. I would think they'd still be doing okay in the UK. I would assume. I bet there are definitely people floating around who are like, I remember when Sam and Nick were on, like, they were promoting it and their faces were on the packaging. What happened there? As far as I'm concerned, when it first launched, I thought it was their brand.
I thought it was their brand as well.
I thought it was their brand. So, you know, you'd be forgiven if you thought that as well, because that's how they marketed it. And yeah, I mean, I've still got all of mine. I've decluttered a few over the years, but they are good brushes. So
yeah, they're good brushes.
Yeah,
I still use them. I agree.
Yeah, same.
A couple of brands that I am actually unsure about: Smashbox, Stila, Jouer, Zoeva. I feel like these are brands that don't have what I mentioned before. They don't have that hero product that probably has that quiet consumer repurchasing time and time again. I think a few people in our first video mentioned maybe Too Faced as well. I don't think Too Faced are going anywhere. I think they're totally fine. But Smashbox, they don't have like a product that people go, I love this. They tend to reformulate or bring out a new foundation every few years because one doesn't do super well, so then they try to do the next thing. There's no like key product people like, you really need this Max Factor mascara, you really need this blah. They don't have that. The only thing they do have is the carryover from Becca, the highlighters and the under eye corrector. That's the only thing that people talk a lot about.
If we were going to call out a hero product for them, it would be their primers. But
yeah, true.
Even that, I think they're a bit like these days. A little bit old.
You're right. Their primers, that's what they're sort of known for. But I don't.
No, I know what you. I know. I get it. I know. It's
Primer
it's a
waters
bit
are
old
nice.
hat. Yeah, the primer waters are beautiful, but they don't make them anymore. They reformulated them.
Oh.
Now they're just like face mist kind of thing. Yeah, I know. I don't know. Look, I agree. I think they've lumped some Becca products with Smashbox to try and keep them both afloat, and it's
might be working
sad.
Temporarily, but I think they need to find their own identity and find something that makes them special. Because right now, I like some of their products, but I don't think that, like, if I never bought from them again, I would not even blink an eye. I'd be like, whatever. Cool.
No.
Good story, Jan. Stila was super popular. They're sort of glitter and glow liquid eyeshadows and they're sort of
magnificent
putty
metals.
highlighters.
Yep.
They were
Yeah.
so popular, and then
Mate, I've
just
still got their putty highlighters. They're so fucking good.
yeah. And
That's
it's the
the thing
time
about
for
Stilla.
it.
I know. Stilla made some fucking banging products. And actually, here's an interesting thing about Stilla. Stilla's been around for donkey's years. It's an old brand. And they did make a comeback, you know, with their putty highlighters and with their magnificent metals. So when we were seeing them in their heyday, they'd already had a heyday prior to that as well. You know, they'd sort of gone through ebbs and flows. So Stilla is one of those brands that I look at and I'm like, keep an eye on that one because they could come back. I feel like all they need is one good release to suck people back in, because a lot of their products that you can still buy these days would be popular with what people are currently wearing on their faces.
Yeah. So they launched in 94, which is around the era of Too Faced, not quite MAC. I think MAC was the 80s, but that kind of like boom of the makeup artist started brand. And this was also started by a celebrity makeup artist. So again, that kind of vibe, it should still be going good guns. Yeah. I agree with you that I feel like just another viral product and they will be set for another 5 years. My only concern is though that this is their time to shine. They've always been known for like the soft champagne, putty, liquid, that kind of thing that is really popular now. They had twinkly eyeshadows before like twinkly eyeshadows were a thing.
Twinkly eyeshadows were cool.
Yeah, so I don't know why they can't reposition themselves in this day and age with ballet core and all that shit as being
very true
a leading brand. And that's why I'm not sure what they're doing, because this is their time to shine. Back when they were having to release things like duochrome liquid eyeshadows to keep with the like chuck a lot of makeup on your face trend of the 2016, 17 and 18, like they were still doing all right, but now is the time. They should be bringing out the most beautiful illuminating putty bronzers of multiple different shades, different undertones, same for blushes, same for highlighters, and they're not doing much. It's very confusing.
I'm actually just having a look at their Instagram now and it's just not it's not looking that interesting. What did they release? A liquid highlight in a like pumpy tube bottle? I just don't think they're really, whoever is working behind the scenes at Stilla at the moment, they're not trendy. They're not wearing like the right socks. Something is wrong. They just don't have their finger on the pulse, which is a shame. And the thing is, I feel like Jouer is a little bit like this as well. Like, what is going on with Jouer? They were huge when they, at their peak. I was going to say when they launched, but it wouldn't be when they exactly launched. But at their peak, they were massive and everybody wanted everything that they were releasing.
Yeah.
But I couldn't even tell you what their latest release is.
Well,
I
I'm
couldn't tell
having
you
a
to
look,
save my own
and
life.
it seems to be all the same stuff. So they've got their blush duos, they've got their lip oils, they've got their everything that we've seen time and time again. It might be a new shade here and there as like we're releasing something for summer, but it is the same shit. And again,
interesting.
This is their time to shine though. This is the clean girl aesthetic, and they're not doing much with it.
You know what I wonder? Potentially Stilla and Jouer are going under the radar at the moment because they don't have to be on the radar. Maybe they do have quiet consumers that are like all these little clean girls who are running out and getting the Stilla and the Jouer goodies. And we're just not seeing it promoted on social media because they don't need to promote it.
Could be. And that's why that's why that's this list where I'm like, is it actually something in trouble, or is it just that there's quiet consumers just plodding along?
They have
and keeping
quiet
the brand
consumers
afloat?
that are
a brand
interesting.
that I think is potentially in trouble, and I don't understand. Ciate.
Oh shit! Yes. Wow, that actually when was the last time Ciate launched anything? And you know what's funny about Ciate? I've always had a little bit of an eye for them because I think their stuff, sometimes they release really cute stuff. But what's always caught me off guard by them is in Australia, if you go into a Mecca and you look for Ciate, you would be forgiven if you could never find it in a store because they usually have this tiny shelf that's about this big. I'm not even joking. It's a tiny, tiny little shelf and they'll have like 5 products on there.
Ciate actually have had a release. They've got a new Perfecting Putty Mattifying Blurring Primer. So there you go. They are still around releasing stuff.
They're still going.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Some other brands that we've got, and I think we could probably talk about these together, although they are, I feel like they're on like opposite ends of the spectrum. Maybe Kat has a different opinion. We'll find out. Bobbi Brown and Anastasia Beverly Hills. Now, Bobbi Brown, the way I see it, that brand is quite consumers 100%. That's it. If you ask me, like, I don't think, what did they last release? Again, I couldn't tell you to save my life. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Bobbi Brown feels like a brand for, I don't even know. Like, I don't want to say boomers because it's not really how I view it, but it's for a brand that is just not, it's not for me. You know what I'm saying? And ABH, like, Freya, can you get down? ABH was so popular. I feel like, again, they must be riding the waves of the money that they made back in their heyday. And they probably, again, have quiet consumers and they're just releasing things here and there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think these are both quiet consumers. I do think they're definitely different consumers. But I don't think these are brands that are going to go under anytime soon. I think they might downsize or pare back, but I think their furniture, they're going to be there just in the background.
I agree. That's a really good way to describe them, I think, furniture. They'll always be there.
Mm-hmm. Everything that we reckon, there's going to be like Anastasia Beverly Hills announces closure tomorrow and Himdash is back with streamers and ribbons.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Yeah.
We don't have their financial documents. We don't know.
Man, I wish some of these companies, like I wish I could have access to them. If they're on the stock market, then you could, you know, there's a lot you can look up, but
they're not.
Yeah, there's also a lot that you can't. So we just got to wait and see what the universe delivers to us, don't we? Mm-hmm. But we're going to leave it there, guys. We do hope you enjoyed this. We want to say a massive thank you to everyone who joined in with the conversation of the last video. If it wasn't for you guys, this would have been much more difficult to make.
That's true.
So it was really fun, like going through the comments and seeing what you all had to say and seeing things from a different perspective. So we appreciate that. Thank you very much. And we'll be back with an episode of Beauty News in a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. So we'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye.